I'm Chelsea. Welcome to the first episode of our podcast, Dermatologist Talks Science of Beauty. If you're listening to this podcast now, chances are you're as much of a skincare fanatic as I am.
A very big hello to all our listeners on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is Dr. Teo Wan Lin, and in this podcast, Dermatologist Talks Science of Beauty, we're going to cover some of the hottest topics all over the world in the field of science, beauty, and dermatology.
First up for our listeners, Dr. Teo is an accredited dermatologist practicing in Singapore, specializing in both medical and cosmetic dermatology. The founder of Dr. TWO Dermaceuticals, a cosmeceutical skincare line, she's also a prominent researcher and a key opinion leader in the area of cosmeceutical skincare. She's the author of the Skincare Bible, the Hair Care Bible, and her very latest book, Masne, Masking Up, A Dermatologist's Guide to Masne, are now available on Amazon Kindle, Apple Books, and Barnes & Noble.
Thanks, Chelsea. That was a very kind introduction, and I'm equally excited to be part of this journey decoding science and beauty for our listeners.
We're really excited to start this podcast with you, Dr. Teo. Why don't you let us know what some of the topics our listeners can expect to hear about in this podcast series?
Well, I think I really want to touch on relevant topics in today's world of beauty from my perspective as an accredited dermatologist and also the founder of a cosmeceutical skincare line. Now, from common skin concerns such as acne, especially with the wearing of fabric face masks, we have Masne, rosacea, which is a medical condition characterized by facial redness, eczema, which is commonly passed off as just merely dry, sensitive skin by laypersons. Now, these are all big topics in dermatology, and I feel that because they are also very common in our general population, it is also my aim to break down the medical science behind these conditions for our listeners. Well, basically, I'm here to teach you about dermatology. We'll go in depth into active skincare ingredients as well. With increasing knowledge available on the internet, it's important to be able to decipher between what is true and what is not. We also want to touch on exciting new developments in the field of beauty and technology, which really brings us back to our original mission, which is to share with our listeners the evolving future of beauty.
I'm excited already. With 2020 looking the way it does, I certainly hope the future will be better. Dr. Teo, how do you think COVID-19 has shaped the business of beauty, skincare, and medicine?
That's a great question. And I want to talk about beauty and skincare together and the impact that COVID-19 has on this industry. Now, rather surprisingly, I found that there has been a positive shift in sustainable practices with regards to home care, self-care in the field of beauty. Now, with COVID-19, a lot of individuals have opted for eating at home, and hopefully that translates into eating healthier home-cooked meals as well. From a dermatologist's perspective, there has been an interesting sort of de-emphasis on aesthetic and cosmetic interventions this year in 2020, simply because of the reality of the lockdown and circuit breaker in Singapore, lockdowns imposed worldwide. Well, you may find it surprising, but to be honest, I am actually all for that. Now, if I may just deviate a little, I want to talk about how, while toxins, fillers, and lasers do form a significant part of my dermatology practice, I personally do not find these practices either sustainable from a physiological or humanistic perspective, nor are they encouraging any sort of positive perception of aging. My patients know that I have always emphasized adjunct cosmeceutical skincare as the long-term maintenance goal for anti-aging and healthy skin in general.
That's really insightful. Thank you for sharing. If I may just add, there has been so much marketing on solutions for skincare problems this year in social media. I wonder what your take is on that.
What is unfortunate is that a lot of true skin diseases have been kind of masqueraded in the eyes of the public by non-dermatologists as being a cosmetic sort of, diagnosis. But the truth is, there are reasons why you may have a symptom on your skin, be it something as common as suffering from acne, or that stinging dryness or flaking you feel on your skin, especially when you're exposed to a change in the environment. Now, back in the days when people were still traveling, it was very common for me to see, ladies or men who come in and say that, my skin is actually really good. I've been using XXX product for this period of time. And it's only whenever I travel that I feel my skin really becomes sensitive. I don't believe my skin is really sensitive, but it must be something that's in this product I'm using or whatever else you want to attribute it to, because somehow they've gotten that impression from maybe that something they read or what's been on social media, etc. Now, what is to me important for the patient to know is that they actually don't just have skin sensitivity, but they have a skin disease or disorder known as eczema. So eczema itself, it can vary in severity, and a lot of people think that it has to start in childhood, and that's not true, because a lot of individuals start developing these symptoms of sensitivity, which are of eczema really, as adults. And it could be related to certain lifestyle exposures. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a condition, for example, that has medical roots. So it's related to a disorder in the skin barrier, right? So the skin barrier is essentially, right, what protects us from the external environment. And, it's best visualized as the building blocks of skin. You have the bricks, right, that form the barrier, and then in between the bricks you have the joining cement, which is a fatty lipid known as a ceramide. So in this case, the correct type of skincare for individuals with eczema, according to the latest dermatological research, is actually a type of moisturizer known as a PED, or prescription emollient device. So such a moisturizer should contain an optimal lipid balance that mimics the physiological balance of the ceramides in your skin. Now, it also should contain antioxidant, anti-inflammatory ingredients in the skincare formula in order to best kind of address the inflammation and the barrier defect that's occurring in an individual with eczema. Now, for another common skin problem, which is acne, or in 2020, we've been talking about maskne. Traditional topical ingredients that are effective for the treatment of acne are things such as sulfur, salicylic acid, tea tree oil, benzoyl peroxide, which are all over-the-counter preparations that are readily available to the public and in cosmetic formulations. But these are no longer relevant in the age of the mask wearing COVID pandemic. The reason is because we do find that all these active ingredients, which have been used traditionally, have astringent, which means it dries out the skin, properties, and that increases the risk of a condition known as irritant contact dermatitis when you apply the conditions of fabric face mask or any sort of face mask you're wearing throughout the day. So this is known as occlusion, right? So the occlusive microenvironment of wearing a face mask changes the bacterial, the microbiological balance of the skin. And it is important for us to understand that these traditional, remedies for mild acne, for example, will not, be very relevant in the current Masni era. On the other hand, active botanical, antioxidants and those with anti-inflammatory properties are rather, increasingly being focused on in the area of dermatological research, and is highly relevant when you're talking about the occlusive environment of mask wearing.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of gems of information there that I'm sure our listeners would love to get to know. Another shift in the COVID-19 pandemic has been to virtual consultations in medicine. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with teledermatology?
We started teledermatology actually way back in November 2019 to meet the need for our international patients to fulfill their prescriptions, especially when a lot of them live in regions that may not have access to international hospitals where they have specialist dermatological care. So the upside was that our practice had a bit of a head start in terms of coordinating the protocols and the logistics of our teledermatology virtual consultation processes. Something to highlight is that in Singapore, at least, it is very much a process of self-accreditation for teledermatology that you apply for with the relevant ministries as part of your documentation. So a robust teledermatology protocol that we derived fulfilled the essential requirements that were the same offered by a face-to-face consultation for medical legal purposes. Now, let me just break it down to you what that means. Now, if you see a doctor, first of all, you do want to feel that your doctor, is there for you, wants to help you, and is a credible, trustworthy individual for you to share your medical concerns with. Now, in the case of dermatology, I would say that, we are very, very well suited for telemedicine. And in particular, the term teledermatology has been around for the last decade and has been already in execution, for certain institutions that may not have a resident dermatologist, such as nursing homes and where there is, predominantly an outpatient sort of caseload, as opposed to inpatient dermatological conditions, which actually require, closer follow-up and evaluation of a lot of systemic symptoms. Now, why do I say dermatology is very well suited for telemedicine? The key thing is that we are primarily a visual specialty that relies on the recognition of patterns, colors, and what we call morphologies of rashes. So it's a way that is a language that has been described, in the specialty of dermatology for us to characterize different types of rashes, and from there we formulate our diagnosis or list of differential diagnoses. So the translation to a virtual platform where really what you have would be in this era is not easy. It's not difficult to request high resolution photos, even when it's taken with your smartphone. So that part I think is something that is easily qualified. But we also ensure that patients are aware of the setting of the photographs that they submit. So as a baseline, we emphasize the lighting. So bright, natural daylight is preferred against a white background to minimize any color distortions. And of course, we know that the light should come in from either in front of you or the side. And we also give recommendations and samples on the distance of the photograph that should be taken from. So for a close-up lesion, for a slightly further up sort of photo that gives us an idea of the distribution of the rashes, these things are very important to consider. One more thing that I feel is important for us to highlight is that it doesn't mean that every single individual qualifies for a teledermatology consult. In fact, we have a robust triage process that is performed by our dermatology nurse, and it essentially screens out individuals with acute skin conditions who may not be suited for a virtual consultation. Finally, we also do recommend in-person photography with our professional camera and lighting, and video examinations as well. All these should be done in person. But overall, as the circuit breaker lifted and the measures have somewhat become a little bit more lax, we have maintained the proportion of our patients that are on follow-up with us via virtual consultations. This is largely because I think out of the overall public health, climate that, we are all concerned about resurgence of this pandemic. And, this is something that we're seeing worldwide as well, and we certainly don't take it for granted. The other thing is that it allows us to control the traffic in our clinic a lot more precisely. So I feel that telemedicine, teledermatology in particular, is here to stay.
I totally agree, especially during the environment that is COVID-19 right now. Well, thank you again, Dr. Teo, for speaking to us today, and that about sums up our first episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.